Hello folks, welcome once more to the lair of OmnusI, my basement lair, and another State of the Dungeon address by yours truly, Rob, GM at Large. Today is a review of the game that was played on the 19th of September 2019. Pardon me, there we go. The game, 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, using the Princes of the Apocalypse storyline. And this game kind of started to diverge even more from the storyline because the group was preparing to close the air portal to deprive Olhydra of another crack in the fabric of reality where she was drawing power from. And they finally had wrested Windvane. So the spear that was tied in with the elemental air, which is also the key to closing the portal. So they went into the node, attempting to get to the portal to destroy it. Along the way, they lost Terran. He went into a room that they had discovered was trapped. It would steal the breath out of a person, and with a possibility of actually killing them. But he went in under the influence of a gaseous form potion and got sucked away. So they lost Terran again. So at this point, the group had gone through the air node, finding a few encounters here and there, a rather nasty one involving a frozen pool, and various evidence to show that this place had actually at one point been a site under a settlement of deep gnomes and respected by the dwarves that the air cultists had basically perverted for their own purposes. So they went in and found a sarcophagus that had belonged to a famed dwarven hero and dragon slayer thousands of years ago. And this particular sarcophagus, they had opened it up. They had already gotten rid of the yellow mold on the outside of it. And they found a bottle, and they found his short sword, which is a dragon slayer, nice little toy against dragons, along with the bones of the hero. Now, before we play a game, I generally like to run a separate game to kind of sharpen their minds and get them into thinking. After you've gotten done with work and you're not really in the mood to play a cerebral game, sometimes having something like that is like having an appetizer before a meal. It sharpens everything, draws everything into focus a little bit, and gets you prepared to start thinking abstractly and puzzling through things. So that's generally my intention when I run these games. And they did uncommonly well in this particular game, using several intuitive leaps to solve a mystery that I put before them. So they were rewarded with getting Terran back. In actuality, Terran was in a bottle that they had found in that sarcophagus. The trap actually had siphoned Terran, as well as several stolen breaths, into the sarcophagus. So, yeah, he was good. So he popped out of the bottle, and he told them that he had talked to the ghost of the dwarven hero from the sarcophagus, and after swapping stories about how he also had fought against an evil dragon, the Dragon Slayer said, well, you should take my sword. You could probably find a better use for it than it just lying here in my sarcophagus. So they took the sword without problem to their conscience anymore. They then went through the node. There was a chasm that they had to leap or cross over. There was a narrow ledge that they could use acrobatics for. But a running leap got most of them, the strengthier-based people. There were a few mishaps, but nothing serious. Nobody plummeted into the 100-foot deep chasm. So they got over to the other side, and they discovered there was a cavern progressing on, and that there was another path off of the chasm that they hadn't explored. So they jumped over to that, or at least Terran did. And he found there was a room full of drowned air cultists who had been turned into Olhydra's puppets. He thought that he would, well, he called for the rest of them, and the zombies disgorged poison on him, which hurt. He has no resistance against that, so that stung. And then the priest of the air cultists issued blasts of water out of his hands, which had a chance of knocking Terran into the chasm. Little homebrewed monsters that they were not in this. The storyline does not have anything on the takeover of any further assets once one of the elemental princes comes in, but truth be told, as far as the storyline goes, generally the players go through, they take out the prophet, they shut down the portal, take out the prophet, shut down the portal. That's kind of the assumed flow, and that didn't happen in this game. So the air portal was still open, and Olhydra would have moved to take that power, which she had been doing up to this point, using the air portal to call down lightning bolts on those who displeased her. So at this point, I took some liberties and had her reinforce the air node with some stouter defenders, I thought. The zombies weren't meant to be a serious threat, just something to let them feel like they're awesome, and they mopped up the zombies. Turns out that the zombies were just basically flesh husks with filled with water that was a weaker elemental that was given special powers by Olhydra's minions. So they beat them, again, relatively handily. Took a little damage in the process, but nothing too serious. Then they they left that room and went into another and found that all these caverns kind of interjoined. They found a junction that basically was before the room of the air portal. And in this were pillars. And in front of the pillars were two women who were tied up and had the symbol of elemental air carved into their heads with a knife. Nasty. Both of them were fairly delirious and were in a pretty bad way. But sensing that this was a trap, they found out that there were two large demons in the room, Barogorasses, which basically look like giant fiendish apes. But they're full-on demons. They're nasty. Sorta. The group is pretty powerful by this time, and these creatures themselves aren't terribly powerful. They're a big bag of hit points who can hit pretty hard. But when you have a paladin on your side who's not afraid of throwing down a couple of smites, it didn't last very long. He carved one of them to pieces with his first strike. It didn't have much of a chance, really. I mean, he just devastated it. One of his shots was a critical, which hurt. That one had tried to use Entangle on the group. That didn't work. Everybody made their saving throw, including the wizards. So yeah, all in all, they're fairly weak competition. I think somebody got hit a bit, but not anything that really threatened them. By this time, the group is more than capable of taking on threats of that nature. So they flattened the Barogorasses before they even had a chance to hurt the captives. So they rescued the two. Turns out one was a local native farmer woman, wife of one of the homesteaders, and the other one was a noble from Greyhawk, a diplomat who was going through and attempting to find out what was going on in the valley, and, well, she'd been captured by the air cultists, so here she was. So they rescued her. There will be a reward in the offing if she gets back to Greyhawk, so that's good. So the group rescued her, but then they realized, well, we've got to go on. They rested for a short bit there on the doorstep to the air portal, got back some abilities, some powers, which was good, and proceeded on to the next room. After a couple of winding caverns, they found themselves in a fairly large chamber, but not large on the scope of the water temple or the fire node or the water node or even the earth node. This cavern was relatively small, but it was dominated by the air portal. It was a large mass of storms in a roughly spherical shape, sending out occasional strokes of lightning, and they could see visions into the air realm. No defenders. They didn't trust that, nor should they have. Sure enough, they went a short distance, and a demon, a Hezru, poked its head around the corner. Hezraus are nasty, certainly, to low-level parties. They can be devastating with a variety of attacks. But outside of their magic resistance, they don't have a huge range of defenses that should intimidate a group. And the party was just ready to move out and smite it. However, he had a friend. He had a Nalfeshni, which kind of looks like a giant, fat, pig-like man with a large boar's head. It stands about 12 feet tall. This one was actually rather tough. He was handpicked by Olhydra herself, so this one had more hit points than your average one. But that was it. It didn't tweak it too much. Honestly, these things are supposed to have a challenge rating of 12. The group is 9th. Should have been a decent fight. And he has the ability to teleport where he wants to. He appeared in the middle of the group and started savaging Brock, figuring he'd take out the wizard first. He hit him twice, was not able to take him down with his shots. Wizards can be a lot tougher in 5th edition, and if you're a gnome with a good constitution, yeah, you can have a decent pool of hit points. So even though he got a surprise attack and bam, 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 the other special bonus that he has was he has the power to use his teleport as a bonus action rather than use his action to teleport. He can do that once a day. So he basically did that to appear and attack. They're very intelligent, so this could have been a good idea because they didn't have anybody who recognizably looked like a cleric, and he didn't quite hold paladins as high of a threat, fool, as a cleric. He definitely would have gone after their healer first if he had the opportunity, but there's no visible healer in this particular party. Again, in this group, Geth wasn't there. He probably would have gone after Geth if Geth had been there, because Geth is a noble, he wears robes, and he's starting to look a little lizardy because of his bloodline, but Oriana was the secondary target for him because she's not wearing any armor. He could recognize that she was a monk, but thought she was a striker that he should probably have gotten rid of early if he could, but the wizard was probably the bigger threat to him. Terran obviously kitted out as a warrior. He was a tertiary threat, he thought. So his options were not very good. So he took out what he thought was the biggest threat. The only problem was he didn't finish the job, and, well, there's little Brock, who just got pummeled, and he tots off out of the way. It wasn't his fault. They didn't know that, they could suddenly have a foe teleport into them as strong as the Nalfeshni was. And also the Nalfeshni has an ability to dazzle everybody around him. That didn't work. They all made their saves. Having a paladin around really makes that saving throws somewhat trivial. He's got a huge bonus he gives to everybody, so they all made their saving throws fairly easily rather than be frightened of this creature. And then how it all came down, there's just a straight up fight. They carved into the Nalfeshni. The Nalfeshni tried to fight back against the foe that hurt him, who was Oriana. I think he clipped her. Not much, though. I mean, my dice weren't really all that on, and looking back at the encounter, it really wasn't enough to challenge the group with just a flat-out fight. The Nalfeshni needed to have circumstances and a little bit better so that he didn't get a chance to get teed off on by the whole group. But that wasn't the circumstance there. Oh, also, there was a rogue lightning bolt or two that struck out, but one went after Auric, and he's a rogue, dodged out of the way. Another one, I think Brock got hit by a lightning bolt, but he made his saving throw, which was enough to stop him from getting knocked out. And then a healing potion, and he was better. But the group, Terran and Auric were going after the Hezru. And Terran tried to throw Windvane into the portal. The problem was massive amounts of air were blowing out of the portal, and lightning bolts were zapping out. So throwing it was difficult. Disadvantage. Terran rolls 1. Throws it up, a lightning bolt tags the spear, and it goes flying into the hand of the Hezru. So now the Hezru gets a stab attack along with his claw attack and bite attack. Doesn't really matter. He's not that effective. Against Terran, yeah. Terran's mostly warrior, so he's able to take a decent amount of blows, and I wasn't rolling that well with the Hezru, so I think I just tagged him with his claws. At this point, the Nalfeshni was tired of getting teed off on. Antaeus had turned around and smote him soundly a few times. He took some significant damage, and he didn't have resistance against what the party was throwing at him. His one saving grace, that resistance to magic, stopped Brock from completely dazzling him. He tried a hypnotic pattern. That didn't work. And finally, the Nalfashni realized that he was not going to accomplish his goals at this rate. The party was still too healthy. He wasn't going to drop anybody. He wasn't going to have a chance to try to kill anybody. He was just going to get banished for no good. So he teleported back over by the Hezru and took Windvane. And he taunted the group, saying, well, you may have won, but I'm going to take this away, and I have a feeling you need this. The party stopped what they were doing, and everybody turned and tagged the Nalfashni, which he was tough, but not tough enough to take all the punishment they laid on. I believe he was finally felled, even though he made a saving throw. He was finally felled by a water whip from Oriana. And, yeah, that was that knocked off the Nalfashni, and the Hezru after that tried to fight, but he just got mulched. Finally, the group grabbed Windvane, gave it to Antaeus. Antaeus used his swan helm to fly up and stab it into the portal. As soon as it hit the portal was basically shattered. Windvane was also shattered. So that weapon is gone. Which, the party mourned a little bit, but it was uncomfortable for anybody carrying it, to the point where Auric really hated that spear. Which is legit, because it didn't like him very much either. It was amused by him because his will was low enough that it could manipulate him from time to time, but he was too goody two-shoes for it. Truly, in many cases, Auric is one of the best of the group as far as having a conscience and a code of honor, and the kind of things you don't see much with rogues, but he's playing it well. I'm pretty happy with that. So yeah, for the most part, the battle was over at this point, and the portal was closed. The immediate reaction, because this was the weakest of the portals, because the prophet really didn't know her stuff, wasn't doing a good job. The end result was that, in general, it just stopped getting windy. The connecting chains of ooze and water that were tied to the portal that were siphoning off power to Olhydra snapped and retracted. So Olhydra knows full well who did it, when it happened. Yeah, she's not happy with them. She also knows that they're going to be out of there before she can leverage enough minions to take them out. Which is kind of funny, because actually her forces are fairly close to them. All of the nodes to the elemental portals are connected to one level of the underdungeon called the Fane of the Eye. And you can get to the different nodes from the Fane of the Eye. It's not huge, which is kind of strange. It's really weird that from all the temples all out in the Badlands of the valley are all out many miles apart from each other. But at the same point, they have tunnels that connect to the temples, which are underneath. And then the tunnels from the temples going down to the Fane of the Eye bring them all to connect fairly close. And then you have the nodes off of that. So realistically, they were fairly close to the water node the whole time. But while they were in the air node, they were sheltered, because it is something of a demiplane, and it is cut off from the vision of Olhydra. So they were safe as they were. Now that the demiplane is kind of cracked and rejoined the reality, they're again exposed to the vision of Olhydra, but they booked out of there quite quickly. Went back up and met back up with the dragon who was guarding the portal against their eventual victory. He was beat up. Even an ancient bronze dragon can only take so much abuse, and he was clearly in a bad way. His wing was dislocated, he had been battered pretty heavily, but he's like, I knew you won because the fighting basically stopped. They stopped coming at me. So he was glad to see them, but he wasn't able to carry them anymore. So the gold dragon came down, and he had been there the whole time fighting. He stayed in the field and kept the elementals out in the valley from moving in and menacing the bronze dragon all at once. So together, basically, they were responsible for keeping the party from being swamped from above. Although the Gold Dragon took the flashy thing, he was able to get the most kills because he was able to maneuver out in the plains using his breath weapon on multiple hordes of elementals and elemental minions. So he got a huge amount of kills. The Bronze Dragon stayed in human or in his elven form and fought as best as he could. So, yeah. So the Bronze Dragon certainly deserves a share of glory in this, but the Gold Dragon's like, oh, you need to travel. Jump on. Where do you want to go? So they got onto his back, which it's an ancient gold dragon. It's huge. Even though he's, a bit vainglorious and more than a little full of himself, he's still a very powerful, strong, large creature. And yeah, he is very intelligent and very wise. He just has an ego issue. So they're like, we want to go to Hamlet. And he thought where Hamlet was, and he realized that if he flew overland, it would take a little while. But one of the secrets that he knows of that the others don't necessarily is that there are dragon gates. Basically, cracks in the world that dragons have exploited to travel vast distances with relatively small risk. For a dragon, especially an ancient dragon, traveling between worlds is not that big of a deal. As a matter of fact, sometimes they can see visions and images of what may be in the future when they do this. Again, this isn't in the world. This is something that's unique to my realms, but it's something I've had in almost all of my worlds, so I like it. It takes something of great power to be able to open these gates. Elves learn basically to cheat and make teleportation circles, which is why the teleportation circle spell exists. Dragons can do this in more places. They don't need pre-designed circles, but an interesting thing is they can sense where circles are and use those as an escape out of the space between worlds. So if you have a teleportation circle and it's not properly worded, poof, a dragon could suddenly appear in your room. Although if it's too small of a room, sometimes those rooms are just big enough for the circle on purpose so that large creatures can't just suddenly appear in them. So, flap, 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 flap. They pass through the portal. They enjoy the Technicolor. Nobody's too freaked out by this, although the two women that they rescued were kind of catatonic. And eventually they get out to Lance Rock, which is a place where they battled a necromancer outside of Hamlet. And the elves had retaken the place because it was a site that was special to them. And the group just flew back to Hamlet. It took them all of 2 minutes. And they landed there. The guards were like, oh crap. The guys got off. Captain comes running up. It's like, oh, it's you guys. So the dragon's with you. That means he's good. Yeah, he's good. Dragon takes off. After one last barbed comment, it's like, no, I'm not with them. They're with me. And he told them, if you ever need a competent spellcaster, let me know. And they're like, we have one, thanks. And they gestured at Brock, which was kind of an endearing, the group coming together thing, even in the face of an ancient gold dragon. So it was well done. I believe that was Antaeus who said that, so bonus points. So they get back, they talk to the captain, who they're all sick of the rain. This valley is rapidly filling up and will become an inland lake before too long if something isn't done. But even though the water that is dropping is briny, he thinks that the valley can still be saved. The druids are fairly certain that they can counter it over time, at least enough so that everybody in the valley won't starve. So the group has at least got something to fight for. They go to the Inn of the Welcome Wench. And while they're there, Tensor walks in, and he kind of explains how things are going, even as the group started to break up for the night. In that, Mordenkainen has basically, still been hard at work trying to figure out what's going on, and that at the moment it's impossible to assail Gar Shatterkeel, the Prophet of Water, who is still carrying the Tide Flash, I think it's called. Tide something. But the Trident of Power. because Olhydra has created a large, impenetrable dome over Riverguard Keep, where Gar is currently settled, and it can't be attacked from without. Also, Olhydra has managed to accumulate so much power that she can create columns of water hundreds of feet into the air and 50 to 100 feet thick, and just drop them on things. She's already smashed Belliard with this and destroyed 90% of the town and killed hundreds of people using this attack. She can use it pretty much anywhere in the valley. She's also used it on the army that the princess had raised to go and hunt down the cults, who were swamped basically because of the weather. It's been nothing but nonstop downpour in this valley with all this nasty briny water, as Olhydra is flexing her muscles. So they weren't able to go anywhere in this morass, and suddenly she dropped this massive column of water. The one good thing is that Magnus, the psychic cyclops, has encountered the army, and he led his group, who was also fighting cultists. They were concentrating on the Earth cultists, but they joined up with this group. Magnus managed to save many of the key leaders of this army and got them to an underground system of mines where Olhydra can't get them as easily. She's pouring water into the mines to try to flood them out, but they have some time yet. They're not in great spirits, but they're still intact, at least, in case they need to be called upon. And Magnus is quite powerful, so that's not necessarily a bad thing. Mordenkainen had an idea, however, on how to still attack Gar. They can't dimensional portal in, they can't dimension door in, they can't teleport in. Riverguard has no teleportation circle that they're linked to. What they did find out, though, because of what the group told Mordenkainen, and he intuited from his vast amounts of lore and talking to that bronze dragon who's the scholar, is he learned about the Fane of the Eye. And he knows that at the Fane of the Eye there are tunnels leading out to each of the temples. And also, that's where the nodes connect from. So if they dare, they can go down into a temple, go down to the Fane, go across the Fane to where it goes up to the Water Temple, which they know where that is. They've been there before. They can go up that path, into the temple, out those canals, and out into Riverguard Keep through the dome. They'll be inside of the dome, in there in a lockdown drag-out with Gar Shatterkeel, Prophet of Elemental Water. The risk is immense. Olhydra is loose. Olhydra might make an appearance in this battle. It's incredibly risky. It's incredibly dangerous. Gar is undoubtedly going to be guarded with all kinds of potent allies and monsters. So it's certainly hoped that the group will be at full strength when they go to fight, and that they'll have to use some cleverness to ensure the battle goes the way they need it to. This is the crux of the adventure. There aren't very many more stories in this particular campaign left to tell. This could be the most pitched battle they've had against a foe that has total party killed an iteration of this group once already. Now they have to take him on again while he knows they're coming. Although he may not know the hour, he knows they're coming. And he knows how important he is. He's even more powerful now that Olhydra is out and about. And they still have to take him down, steal his trident, get it back down to the water node, and shatter the portal in order to end Olhydra's evil. Or, if we want to go into an increasingly unlikely possibility, at this battle, if Olhydra shows up, they could beat Olhydra. I used to kind of giggle at that, but after I saw what they did to the Nalfashni and things, it's on the outside possibility. If everything works out perfectly well for them, it might happen. But it's highly unlikely, and it would probably be an act of incredible desperation that will almost certainly cost some of them their lives to do this. Can it be done, though? I'm not going to say no. This is not the course. Why? This is not the course of wisdom. This would be a course of desperation. If Olhydra stops them from getting to the temple, stops them from getting down to the node, stops them from getting to the portal, that they turn and are healed and have to fight, well, good luck. Good luck. This is the thing. This is the end. This is the crux of it all. It could be a bad ending. It's possible. The foes that are stacked up against them are very powerful. The group is quite powerful too. I'm not cutting them down, but... well, if any of you guys are watching this, you better bring your A game next time, because this could all be very, very messy if you just blunder through it without a care, as some encounters have gone. That's the story. Hopefully you guys will come here next time and see how it all turned out. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time here in the lair of OmnusI. Farewell.